Hi, I'm Kelly Hurt, and welcome to my little farm. Today we're going to give you a little tour of a small acreage farm. This one's 18 and a half acres. It was originally my wife's grandmother's farm, and my wife wound up inheriting it. And we've been living here for, I guess, about 18 years now. And so it's kind of been a process of trying to figure out what we wanted to do with this acreage. For the first probably 10 years, we did nothing but cleanup. It's not that it was in a really bad shape, but there had been a lot of stuff that had been discarded on it over the years, and we bought some land that adjoined it that had a lot more stuff on it. So we spent a lot of time just in cleanup. And once we got that finished, then we started trying to figure out what we wanted to do going forward. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, we fenced it, and then since that time we've continually added more and more fencing and sort of started refining our ideas of how we wanted to manage this small property. And in essence, what we're trying to do here is to create a functional farm ecosystem. I'm busy. I'm not a farmer, but this is a piece of property we've got. We want to maintain it. I'm busy doing a lot of other things that I don't have a lot of time to be out here brush hogging or, doing a lot of stuff. So what we focused on was trying to find ways to let the plants and animals work together to manage themselves, so it didn't take a lot of input from me. And what we realized was if we just had cows, they just ate the grass, and that left tons of weeds that I still had to come out and brush hog. If we just had goats, they ate lots of weeds and brush, but we had lots of grass. And so over time we learned that we needed to blend our animal species out here, and we wound up with 3 belted Galloway Angus crosses and 5 Dorper sheep. And we started with only about 8 or 10 goats, but they quickly multiplied. They've done really well. So we'll start off with the cattle. The belted Galloway, some people call them the Oreo cows. That's what we call them, Oreo cows. But they have the very distinguishing white band around the midsection. And they're a small breed. They're not really a mini breed, but they're small. Now these have been crossed with Angus, which makes them even a little bigger and a little thicker. But we've got 1 bull and 2 heifers. They're fairly docile. They've not really caused us any problems, and they are pretty easy to maintain. We've not really done anything to them except put them out here and let them do their thing. The Dorper sheep, they are tough. Really, really, really love the Dorpers. They are a hair sheep, so you don't have to shear them, and they're a meat sheep, and they supposedly taste better than the type of sheep that you see people when they shear them. The wool sheep, the woolies, some people call them. So they're supposed to taste a lot better. I'm probably never going to eat one. I will probably never know for myself, but that's what I'm told. And then we have 3 different kinds of goats. The white ones with the red heads, those are Boer goats. Don't ever buy Boer goats. Learn from my mistake. Boer goats are great goats. I love them. They're beautiful, but they are very, very, very sensitive to intestinal parasites, barber pole worms, to be specific. And so you have to worm them a lot, or they will die. And as we walk through today, we'll actually see one that's got some worm issues right now that I need to get her treated for. Then you'll see all the solid colored goats. Those are our little Spanish goats. I greatly recommend Spanish goats. They're tough, they're great mothers, they're easy to keep. They can have babies anywhere and hop up and take off. I mean, they're really easy for someone like me that's not an animal expert. I mean, they pretty much take care of themselves. And we are crossing both the Boers and the Spanish with a Kiko buck. And the Kikos are also very resistant to worms. We've not really had to do anything to the Spanish or the Kikos. No worming, no shots, nothing. They just just thrive. The boars, we have to worm them fairly routinely. But what we found is, since we've been doing this, the combination of these species keeps me off a tractor. I've not had to brush hog any because the cows are eating the grass. The goats are eating what people call weeds, but are actually forbs, and they're just things that cows don't want to eat. So the goats eat something totally different than the cows. So they don't impact the stocking rate of each other. And sort of the middle ground would be the Dorper sheep. They eat grass and they eat some of what we would call weeds, but they tend to probably be a little heavier on the grass side. And so that little mixture, they pretty much eat everything except for the sage grass. And that is indicative of a phosphate, well, a nutritional deficiency in the soil. So that's something we'll need to address in other ways. So this is one of our boar nannies, and she's probably, I don't know, she's probably 3 years old, 3 or 4. I like the goats in terms of their personality. They're very easy to tame, gentle up, and you don't have to chase them. They come to you, and they're kind of like dogs. You can, once you get them, used to you and trusting you, you can do just about anything with them. So you don't really have to have elaborate traps or pins or anything to catch them. If you need to work on one, you can just walk up to it and work on it. So what's interesting is, if you watch her eat, she's not just eating whatever is on top. She's sticking her head under there, and she's finding exactly the stuff that she wants to eat. And that's what's interesting about goats. Everybody thinks that goats will eat anything, that they'll eat a tin can. That's really the furthest from the truth. They're extremely picky, and they eat what they like most first, and then they sort of work through it. But they'll pick through this stuff and get the tastiest bits, and once they've got all of those, then they move on to something else. But very, very picky. But if you look at their mouth, come here, babe. If you look at their mouth, they have a very, I don't know how to say it, a very functional mouth, in that with the way their lips are, they can pick things. Whereas cattle are more just get big wads. The goats can go in and pick out little bits and get exactly what they want. So anyway, let's move on. So with the Belted Galloways, they are a small breed, but in addition to being small, they're fairly docile. They're easy to tame. For a period of time, I had the bull where I could pet him and brush him and everything. But I figured out with bulls, you probably don't want them too tame, because we had a little incident with him and my wife where she had a bucket of feed and he just kind of brushed her aside. And he's too big and muscly to be too tame. He needs to have a little bit of a distance between you and him, a little bit of personal space. So they're easy to deal with, but you don't want them too tame. Now here are some of our little Spanish goats, and these young ones are actually Spanish Kiko crosses. This is a little Billy, the little black one is. And then all of these others, they're our first generation cross. And they're pretty small. I suspect that my Spanish may have a little bit of dwarf in them, because they're just not hardly as large as I think they should be. But maybe it's just because they're young. But anyway, they seem to be thriving. They've not had any kind of shots, nothing. They've not been wormed, none of that. They just were born and they've been surviving and living here. So they've really thrived on their own without a whole lot of input from me and absolutely zero medication, which is awesome. Now we've got some goats that don't look great, and those are going to leave our herd and we're going to focus on the ones that thrive and that do great with no medicine. And that's going to be the base of our little herd here, so that we have something that's just extremely low maintenance. The other things we're probably going to look for are those, if they're good mothers, and if they, don't have any issues when they're kidding. You just don't want to have to pull goats. It's very difficult on the mother, and it's really, really hard on the little babies. So we want to do as little of that as possible. Here's my Dorper ram. He's a little confused right now. He is, from time to time, he falls in love with the goats and follows them around, even though they want nothing to do with him. But other than that, he's a good ram. This one, that ewe right there, is actually less than 1 year old, and that's what's amazing to me. Yeah, that's what's amazing to me about the Dorpers, is how fast they grow. So that sheep is the same age as those little bitty goats that were running around here. They were born at the exact same time, so that's how much faster they grow. That's pretty cool to see them put on that kind of weight that quickly. So that little black goat is the same age as that great big lamb down there. So let's go look at my big billy goat. So this is my billy goat, and he loves to rub his eye on me for some reason. I guess he has itchy eyes. And he's a great goat. I like him a lot. He will get territorial when they're coming in heat, when the nannies are cycling. He will always try to stay between me and them. And so it's pretty interesting. He also guards them from the ram as well. But other than that, he's pretty easy to deal with. He's not that bad. But he is keenly aware of his horns. If you watch him, sometimes he'll like scratch his back here with them, which is pretty funny looking. So the upshot of all of this is that now that we have all the different species, we don't have to spray herbicides to kill weeds, because now we have animals that actually thrive on those types of plants. We're also, one of the things we're doing when we feed hay in the wintertime is, because we have some of this broom sage, which is not really palatable to any of our animals, we're unrolling the hay across the top of it to kind of knock it down, and that will reseed with some more desirable grasses, and also put some organic matter and maybe added some nutrients to the soil. So hopefully by doing this, we're going to start creating a better pasture and knocking back some of this broom sage and having better species here that's more palatable to all of them. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to work all of this together with, valuing all the different kinds of plants here and taking advantage of them by putting different kinds of animals here in different mixtures, so that all the plants get utilized. And so that keeps me from having to spray my place with toxic chemicals, and I don't have to sit on a tractor all day mowing it. And right now, it's working pretty great for us. We're happy with it. We've still got worm issues with our boar goats. We just need to get rid of them and stick with the Kikos and the Spanish. We probably want to add some Dorpers. We're probably going to get rid of our bull and just keep the 2 cows. And, I probably wouldn't even keep the 2 cows except for this. The cows tend to act as a sink for the goat and sheep parasites, and the goats and sheep also act as a sink for the cattle parasites. So cattle parasites can't survive in the intestine of goats and sheep, and goat and sheep parasites can't survive in the intestine of the cattle. So they reduce the parasite loading for each other. So that's another benefit of having, more of a functional ecosystem of animals here on the farm. So we've done some tree plantings to go along with what we're doing with the grasses, and that's been pretty interesting. The elms and the oak trees and the sugar maples the goats and sheep just love them. But what we've noticed is really interesting is walnuts. With the walnut trees, I will go out and I'll pull down a limb, and the goats and sheep will aggressively eat it for about 30 to 60 seconds, and then they're done. And so I did a little reading on it, and it turns out that walnut leaves are high in some natural compounds that tend to help with goat parasites, and so it's a form of medicine for them. So they take it in the amount that you would medicine, a little bit, and then the other things are food, and they eat those a lot. So that's been another kind of interesting thing to note as we've watched their behavior. And you know, that's been the fun thing, is watching the behavior, how the animals feed, how they kind of pick around to eat what they want to eat, how much they eat of different things, how they respond. So far so good. And you know, we're going to continue on with this and see how resilient a goat and sheep that we can breed up here by just keeping the ones that thrive and get rid of the ones that don't. So I hope you've enjoyed this little visit on our farm, and if you ever wind up with a place like this, we hope that you'll try some things that are a little bit out of the box as well.